So thank you so much, and thank you for having me. And my today's talk is about critical thinking and how we can use critical thinking in the era of COVID and in the era of misinformation. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Peter, and as it was mentioned, I wrote a book that is called The End of Procrastination. And the book now has around 20 translations. So, and when the book was published in the US, I moved there. So I live partially between New York and Prague. So, and it is very important to me to have those two views because I can compare what kind of fake news were spread in the US and what kind of fake news were spread in the Czech Republic during the era of the pandemic. So it's very important to me to share those views because I think that critical thinking is a key skill for 21st century. And COVID, the experience with COVID and with the pandemic showed us that it's a real problem and real issue. And we have to find a way how to solve this global pandemic because we don't experience just the pandemic of COVID, we experience the pandemic of misinformation. So, and when COVID hit the earth, like one year ago, what we can find is kind of similar problems that we all experience around the world. Because now the world is very connected, so we have similar problems in Asia, in Europe, in America. And because we have all the same smartphones, we use the same social networks, so it's kind of a global problem. And we live in the era that is called post-truth. Post-truth society or post-truth era means that this kind of situation in which people are more likely to accept an argument based on their emotions and belief rather than based on facts and logic. So that's the main problem. And this word, post-truth, was named as the word of year 2016 by Oxford Dictionary. And since then, it's getting worse. It's getting worse because we have data that people more and more share news on social media, and they take social media more and more as a relevant source of information. This is how it's changed in the last 7 years. You can see that social media is growing as a source of news, and people are consuming most news on their cell phones these days. So that's the trend of today's world. And the problem is that we are not just facing fake news. We have so many other big problems like climate change or growth of populism around the world, and of course, COVID. And I think that the underlying pattern under those big problems is lack of critical thinking, because lack of critical thinking is kind of meta skill. If we improve critical thinking, then we improve ability of us to solve all those big problems. So that's why I think that critical thinking should be a main focus for us. It should be an important subject at schools, and it should be a solution for future problems that we will be facing as a global civilization or global society. So, and what we can find is that last years are showing that populism is not a solution. And in the era of COVID, it is clear that countries with populist leadership were much worse in terms of deaths per million, and were much worse in the ability of solving the pandemics. So, and one of the main tools for populists are fake news and sharing misinformation. So it's connected. It's very connected. And if we want to solve fake news and misinformation, we have to also focus on how to solve populism as a global threat. Because unpleasant truths are not very popular. They are not that shared on social media. What is shared the most are comfortable lies. People want to share those stories that COVID will end in a few weeks. People want to believe that everything will be just fine. And for example, scientists that were telling people that it's a big threat or that we need to impose some measures were not that popular, and their stories were not the most shared. And I think that COVID is a experience that we as a global society had together. So I think that this should be a wake-up call for all of us, because now we see how many people died, how many people had some long-term health problems because they believed to some fake news. For example, that masks are not working against COVID, or they believe that COVID simply doesn't exist. Now we are in the era of vaccination, and there are so many fake news and misinformation about vaccination, and those misinformation are having a great influence or on decision making of on many. So this should be a wake-up call for all of us, and we should ask what we can do for the future. And World Economic Forum has a list of the biggest threats for mankind, and the rapid spread of misinformation online is one of top 10 since 2014. And again, I think that it's getting worse and worse, and COVID is a great example what can happen if we are not thinking about how algorithms are shaping our lives. So basically, BS, misinformation is everywhere, and the solution is science, understanding scientific method, understanding our cognitive biases, understanding how to make a good argument, and so on and so on. So this is a solution, and we can find this solution in many examples. I love this quote that is attributed to Bertrand Russell, a Nobel Prize winner, who said something like this: man caused the most suffering because he was convinced of things that turned to be untruth. So basically, if you look to the history, what you can find is that we did so many bad decisions based on false logic or based on facts that were untruth. So, and if you look at recent internet, what you can find is that internet is full of low quality information. You have almost infinite number of fake news, misinformation, or what we call BS. And you have so few good and high quality information that are evidence-based. And this is the problem, because this is like the solution is to help people to understand that evidence-based approach is the way, and help them to understand the scientific method and why science is the answer for many of big question of tomorrow. So if you have a good critical thinking, then you can reach your goals kind of quickly. But if you don't have critical thinking, if you believe to some misinformation, then you do bad decisions in your life, and you can end in a very bad future. And I have some examples from recent world. For example, in the US, there is a kind of big group that believe that Earth is flat, and the number of those flat Earthers is growing. So, and why so? How can someone think that Earth is flat? Well, again, it's an example of cognitive bias that is called confirmation bias, because you can Google so many articles, so many information that prove that Earth is flat. And at the end, you can find people that they truly believe this. And the saddest example is this guy, Mike, who built his own rocket to prove that Earth is flat. And sadly, he killed himself during this attempt. And for me, this Mike is a symbol. He's a symbol of what it can be when we believe some problematic or untruth ideas. And we have this example also with COVID, because so many people, they believed something unproven, for example, like that COVID doesn't exist or face masks doesn't work. And at the end, they did similar decisions that endangered their lives. So, and in the era of COVID, you could find so many misinformation. Like at the beginning, there were misinformation about the fact that 5G network is causing COVID. And some people, they truly believe that. And what they did was that they were burning those 5G network antennas, and they were truly like fighting 5G because they thought that 5G is causing COVID. There is no connection. It was just the problem of correlation and causation, because in the era of COVID, number of 5G antennas was growing. And in that time, COVID was also growing. So it was not causation, it was just correlation. But those people, they probably had a false logic under this belief, and they truly believe that those antennas are killing people. So, and what we can find is that we have the same trends globally. For example, in the US, we use the word sheeply. It means someone who's like a sheep following following some group thing. And you can also find the word in Czech Republic. In Czech Republic, they call it ovčan. So it's just the translation of the word from the US. And now you can track those fake news, and you can find that those main fake news servers are just translating the main and the most successful news from the world. So basically, you can have a very successful fake news article in the US, and then in 2-3 days, you can find the same article just translated in different countries. And I have the example from the Czech Republic, and those were the most shared articles just before the second and very deadly wave of COVID in October. And basically, in top 8 articles, most of them are fake news or unproven claims, like Ms. Petkova said that COVID will disappear until Christmas. Didn't happen. Or another fake news that WHO is telling people that COVID is a normal flu. It's not true again, but it was the second most shared article in Czech social media or internet. So this is the problem, because if those articles were the most shared articles, they probably were influence on decision making of many. So basically, if someone believes that COVID will disappear till Christmas, or that COVID is a normal flu, or that face mask doesn't work, or that it's some kind of global conspiracy, then they wouldn't probably protect themselves that much. They weren't follow those measures against COVID, and probably they were in high risk of not just being infected, but probably they were even like in a higher chance of contagion the virus to others, for example, to their relatives. So this is the real problem, and we all experience that. We experience that very deeply here in Czech Republic, because in the second part of the year, we started as one of the best countries and ended as one of the worst countries. And I truly believe that those fake news and misinformation had an enormous impact on that. So BS is basically everywhere, not in just politics, not in just health, but almost everywhere. And I think that the main solution, how to fight those hoaxes, BS, and fake news, is to deploy critical thinking as a key skill, and a key skill for mankind, and key skill for the future. And we have some good examples. Like, again, World Economic Forum is doing a set of skills, 10 most important skills for the workplace. And it seems that critical thinking is growing as a key skill for our career too. So it's not just about doing better decisions for ourselves, but better critical thinkers are better in their careers too. So it should be a main focus for us. It should be an important subject at schools. And we have a good example. The good example is Finland. Finland is fighting fake news in the classrooms. And the good news is that Finland put the whole curriculum online. So basically, we can just download the whole curriculum of critical thinking and deploy it in our classes too. And it seems that it works. Yeah, Finland is top country in a media literacy index. So basically, for them, it's a prevention for fake news, but it's also part of the modern warfare. Because in the era of hybrid warfare, fake news and spreading misinformation is a key weapon, and we have to find a solution how we can defend ourselves. Because what we can find is that so many fake news you can track to some hostile governments, and you can find that for them it's a important weapon how to destabilize Western democracies. So Finland is a good example, and their way or their solution is a good example for other Western democracies. So the main idea behind this talk is that better critical thinking means better decisions, for example, about our health or about politics, and we can get to the better future. And the main enemy for us is what is called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is one of the most important cognitive biases from all. And it works like this, yeah. You have the world, and our brain works in the way that we have a tendency to just cherry pick or to grab information that reinforce our belief system. So basically our brain works in the way that we have some mental models. And mental models are our stored ideas about how the surroundings, how the world works. And confirmation bias is the tendency to just pick those parts or those information that just reinforce our mental models. And this is the main problem, because if you believe that COVID doesn't exist, or if you believe that face masks doesn't work, at the end, you can find so many articles. You can find your even scientists, because there are so many scientists, and some of them are in the group of those conspirational theory believers. So you can find like medical doctor who believes that vaccination can cause autism. You can find a scientist that is engineer, and he can believe that Earth is flat. So the degree doesn't mean that you have truth. And confirmation bias is that you grab those information that reinforce your belief, and you take your opinion makers that reinforce your belief. So you can find that around the world, that those like anti-COVID or anti-masks movement, they had their leaders, and they have their bad science, they have their evidence, they have almost everything. So if you were in that bubble, and sometimes it's called echo chambers, you follow those people on social media, they are sharing those articles that reinforce your belief, and at the end you have a very divided society. So division in the society is the main problem of today's world, because those two divided groups are at the end almost unable to have a nice discussion. So this is how the world works, or this is how our brain works. Unfortunately, this is how the brain works. Sir, we are receiving information that conflicts with the core belief system. Well, get rid of it. And that's it. Yeah, this is why discussion is so almost impossible in recent Facebook. Yeah, I had so many discussions. I spent so many, maybe thousands of hours trying to explain people that face mask is a very important protective measure. But it was almost impossible because if someone had a belief that it doesn't work, he had so many evidence for himself. And at the end, it's very difficult to change someone's opinion because of confirmation bias. And at the end, the main risk for the future is what is called in-group bias. In-group bias is the situation when you have two divided groups. If you divide people among or between us and them, then we have scientific evidence that we don't feel empathy with others. We don't feel empathy with people from the second group. That's the problem. And what we can find is that the division in society is growing globally. So it's not just true for the US. There is a research that in last 2 decades, you can see that division between Democrats and Republicans is growing. And this gap is now between families. There are families that are unable to have nice conversation because parents are, for example, Republicans. Their kids that live in different cities are, for example, Democrats. And during Thanksgiving or during Christmas, you can feel the gap everywhere. And this gap is between people. This gap is between families, and this gap is between like us. And it's everywhere. It's in the Czech Republic, it's in the US, and it's a symbol of today's society. And I think that the main cause of this is algorithms. Our algorithms and Facebook and those big techs are like shaping our belief system a lot because they are investing enormous number of money in their algorithms to just give you information then that you have very strong emotion with. So it means that my timeline is like personal tabloid. It's full of strong stories and it's shaping my opinion. So it's very difficult to fight against because we are we as individuals are very weak in that. I have another example. This is the difference between how vulnerable are those two sides, like liberals and people that are very liberal or people that are very conservative. You can find that there is a little difference that you can find more fake news in very conservative people and less in very liberal people. In the middle, it's kind of similar. It's like V, but on the right side, you have much more fake news. And if you are divided in two groups, if you are divided into us and them, they made an amazing experience. They made an amazing study on fMRI, on a brain scan. And basically they scanned the brain of people. And what they did was they did a pain to someone from their group, and then they made pain to someone from the other group. And what they can find is that we feel empathy with people from our groups, but we don't empathize with others. So at the end, it's easy if you have, for example, I don't know, two nations or two religions or basically two groups. It's very difficult to feel empathy for others. You can find this in the recent warfare in Israel. It's very difficult to find like empathy with others because it's easy to like consider the other group as evil and us as the good guys. And if both parties have the same, at the end it can lead to growth of problems and killing, and this is the problem, because it's embedded in our brains. And I have two very sad stories. For me, the main symbol of in-group bias is the story when Jo Cox was killed, and it was in the era of Brexit. She was one of against Brexit MP in the UK, and basically she had a meeting with her voters. It was lunch, and then a guy with a hat that there was written "Britain First," who was pro-Brexit, went there, and he shot her 3 times, and he stabbed her 3 times, and she was killed. And she was a mother of 3 kids. And this is a very sad example, because when they were doing an examination why he did that, he was under huge influence of fake news. So those people that they are like sharing some hateful speech online, there is a risk that they will turn and they will do something in a real life too. So we should take this threat very seriously. So this is a very sad example, and Jo Cox is a symbol of what can happen when people believe into those misinformation. And another example was was in recent time when U.S. Capitol was attacked by those believers that there was a voter fraud. And again, it was based on the false logic. It was based on fake news, but they attack Capitol, and it's another big symbol of democracy. So what is the solution? Well, the solution is not to divide people between us and them. The solution is to find what unites us. So it's about asking ourselves, so how we can connect with others, because we are all global citizens and we are not that different. If you live in Asia, if you live in Europe or in America, what you can find is that we are not that different. We have same brains. We have very similar habits. We all use the same social networks, as I mentioned. And this should be a lesson for us, because I believe that if we don't find a way how we can connect, then we will be divided, and then we will be unable to solve the future problems. So we should find some universal values. We should find some universal values for the global mankind. And I think that the critical thinking should be one of those, because democratic debate is not a fight, but it's a common path in search for truth with mutual respect. Mutual respect and democratic debate and critical thinking are those values that can save the future generations and the future mankind. Because if not, we will be unable to solve climate change. We will be unable to solve future pandemics. We will be unable to solve risk of AI and whatever. So this should be a wake-up call again for us. And COVID was a beta version of what can happen if we are not focusing on that topic. And we have two kinds of mindset. Yeah? Sometimes we are warriors. We want to fight. We want to fight for the truth with capital T. But warrior mindset is not the mindset of critical thinker. We should switch our mindset into scout mindset. We should try to ask ourselves, like, what is the truth? What are those facts? And we should doubt ourselves, because I think that wisdom is about ability to always admit that you may be wrong, or that wisdom means knowing to say, I'm not sure, or I don't know, or I was wrong. So those are crucial values. So basically humbleness is the answer, because even though if you are 100% sure, you should let there, I don't know, 5-10% of doubt. So never be 100% sure, be like 90% sure, but never more. And try to connect with the people from different groups, and first try to find things that can connect you, and then you can slowly then start to talk about those things that divide you. So basically, this is the end of my today's talk. So we need to have a courage to solve this problem. And I think that we can do that. We can solve this problem as Finland did. So, and COVID should be a wake-up call for us. And I love this quote from Edmund Burke, and it follows like this: the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for a good man to do nothing. So we should not procrastinate solving this issue. We should find a way how to deploy critical thinking as a defense against fake news, or as a defense for democracy. Because if we change ourselves, if we help people to have better critical thinking, better rationality, and be able to overcome their cognitive biases, then they can change those groups that they are part of, and then we can slowly change the whole society. So this was my today's message: critical thinking as a solution for future problems. And thank you so much for having me, and take care. Thank you so much.